There's no real argument made. There's a lot of kind of just there's straw man arguments that he kind of defeats, but it's nonsense. Essentially, I mean, sitting down to write this was a waste of time, and I guess that's one of the things that really stood out to me the most about it is like you're Ben Shapiro, the guy that would own the libs, and drink Leftist Tears out of your tumbler and all this kind of stuff, and this was just.
Maybe that's to us, though. Like maybe the simpler mind buys this.
How can you get more simple than us, Charlie?
You know what I mean? But like...
Welcome to Loaded Talk. I am your congressman, the third most popular candidate to ever be. I am Frank, and along with me, as always...
What's up, planet Earth? I'm Bean.
That is the Bean. The Bean Barrio. Something. Barista.
Well, can I get started for you?
Yeah. It's funny when, just now when you're pointing to me, it reminded me of Wayne's World when they're trying to teach Garth how to do it. At 5? Or no, the other guy, it's like, and then you just silent count and point. Anyway, I almost forgot everything I wanted to say because I was thinking about Wayne's World. So, there are things going on right now. A lot of them are goofy. So we're going to start with one of the goofier things, in my opinion. So they've released 3 batches of JFK files, right? Have you gone either through any of them or any of the ones that social medias are posting? No.
Nope.
All right. Well, so some of it is much ado about nothing, and that like these things aren't scanned in with OCR, where which means you can do a Control F and look for a certain word or something, which also means things like Grok could be able to read it all. I asked Grok if Grok can read it. Grok says I can't read it, but I can read what people are posting about it, which is not necessarily helpful. But there's been some files people said are more redacted. I mean, we're talking about a square here, a square there. But there's others that are less redacted. And some of the papers, the only word that was redacted in previous versions of the file was the name of one single nation that was doing things like espionage and stuff like that. If you had to guess the nation, Charlie, which nation do you think this would be that we've redacted for these many years?
Israel.
Hey, how'd you guess? So there was a lot of that. There's multiple references throughout this thing about our new partners, about some people, Lyndon Johnson. Some people. This was the '60s, so in certain papers. They simply refer to, well, the Jews have this, the Jews. And which nowadays, hopefully,
Very professional.
hopefully we trimmed that up over the last half century. But, it's the JFK thing. I feel like everybody assumes the CIA had a hand in it, right? It seems like perhaps Israel was in partnership during that, which would be a good secret to hold over an ally, where it's like, hey, remember, mutually assured destruction here, right? So keep helping, Who has a nuclear bomb? We don't have nukes. We don't even have nukes. Who gave us nukes? So that's been something that's popped up. And I think, it's a weird... The whole JFK thing is weird because of all the various antics and players involved, right? You have JFK and RFK said it was their mission to take out the mafia. And, of course, this is when the mafia was, awesome, or at least the mafia that's in the movies, Godfather, Goodfellas, and all the good movies. So they had a heavy hand in lots of stuff. And, of course, JFK could not have won the election without the mafia stepping in because Papa Joe, the bootlegger that helped make the Kennedy fortune, was well tied in. Illinois is a big swing state. Chicago voted so heavy for Kennedy. You know, I met this guy who was what was he, a firefighter? I don't know. By the time I met him, he was just an old dude that liked to drink at beach bars, you know. And he's like, I remember the first time I voted. He's like, I was 14. I voted for JFK 3 times. You know, it was just it was an open secret. That was just cheating. It was just cheating, and that's how Kennedy won, in part thanks to help from the mafia, allegedly. And so they get into power. He goes, hey, my brother is now chief dog law enforcement, and we're going after the mafia. And so the mafias are just like, we should own you, you know? So you got mafia mad at him, and then you got CIA. There was some operation going on in Cuba, and it was falling apart. They wanted air support, you know? And JFK was like, I'm not sending military aircraft into Cuba that's an active war of a place that's pretty much allied with the Soviet Union. Nuclear war is a bad thing. He said, nah, which is the right call. But we lost some men. They did not make it out. And so suddenly you have sort of the CIA military wing a little unhappy with them, Further, there's been speculation that JFK was a little suspicious of the CIA, as apparently was Nixon. So, you get these things involved, right? You think about Oswald when he was killed by Jack Ruby, a known member of the mafia, so Oswald killed the guy who was going to go after the mafia. And then a mafia member killed him because he was mad about it, So then he goes to jail, and while awaiting trial, Jolly West of the CIA, do you know about Jolly West?
I've heard the name.
He's do you know in Batman Scarecrow?
Yeah,
he's basically Scarecrow. Oh. So he helped create Charlie Manson. So he was head of some of the LSD mind control experiments that ran for a long time. He took part in the Berkeley Free Clinic, which I guess was a CIA front to keep tabs on hippies all along. But that's where Charlie met a lot of his gals. And even though Charlie went from San Francisco to Los Angeles while on probation, it was okay. And even though he got arrested a few times while on probation, it was okay.
Still fine.
His probation officer always was like, he's cool. He's a good guy, turning it around. And, in Chaos, the book, and now a Netflix documentary, they talk about how they're pretty sure that Charlie was, freely distributing the LSD in that little lot they lived in, kind of like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So there. And so he would keep everyone kind of dosed up a lot, and he would pretend to take acid with them while he kind of preached. So he'd play guitar and he'd talk, and he just kept everyone, tripping balls the whole time, is the theory. And the thought is he learned that from being experimented on, because he was a nothing criminal. He had delusions of grandeur, but people that went to prison with him were like, I don't know, he's kind of a dummy, And then suddenly he's a mastermind. So Jolly West, who was actively involved in those experiments with LSD for mind control, who may or may not have helped form Charlie Manson and allow the murders that occurred, which made everyone fearful of hippies, which derailed the anti-war hippie peace love movement, because now there are a bunch of drugged out wackos that can, drugs will rot your brain, make you into a murderer, which I even remember as a child hearing things like that. So anyway, this guy visits Jack Ruby, the mafia guy, in his cell alone, just the two of them for an hour, and he goes, he's had a break from reality. He can't testify for himself. He just needs to be locked away. Everyone went, well, I guess that's that, So that interaction's another strange one. There's the autopsy photos that seem to show a hole here. They go, oh, it was a exit wound. They go, oh, it was a trach. And it's like, you trached a man who was shot in the skull? Like, I mean, maybe it's an entrance wound. And then, this was at a time when you chose your vice president, basically whoever was second place in the primaries. That was the vice president. Lyndon Johnson, this big personality from Texas. He was not a fan of civil rights. He was, he only used the N-word when discussing black people. He also apparently had a huge hog that he told everyone about, and he would talk to reporters while taking a poop. Just a personality difference between the rich boys from the Northeast.
Okay.
Yeah. He had a nickname for his thing, something like the monster or the something. But I guess he had a hog on him. So he's cocky. But like I remember, so I grew up in Memphis, right? And so there's people who would do like service in like there would be they'd work as waiters and cleaning people and stuff like that, and they'd kind of for big events they might travel throughout the kind of the southeast into Texas a little bit. But I remember stories came back that my dad would tell me about LBJ storming into one of these parties. Well, that's the last time Kennedy makes a monkey out of me. And he was just furious pissed, And then, shortly thereafter. So there's lots of interesting dynamics, right? It's a convoluted, like people just want to know what happened, right? It just doesn't seem like the shot that Oswald took, that I'm sure he took, is not an impossible shot, right? But to think that he just acted alone because of love of communism or something. And, some of these papers also show that the Soviets were reporting back through, I forget who, an intermediary, one of these other countries. They told a country who was...
Australia?
No, I think it's a European nation. But they told this European nation, who was on fine terms with us, that, there's Lee Harvey Oswald has weapons and he's going to try and kill the president. And so, that like has been transmitted by the Soviet Union. So it doesn't seem like this was their operation, so that this guy just got a wild hair, learned how to shoot, and, took these trips to Russia or to the Soviet Union, came back, and was like, that's it. Here we go. Time to kill Kennedy. It just doesn't, even if nothing else was going on in the crowd, right? The idea that he got this idea on his own, executed it on his own, picked out a good vantage point, knew the schedule, like had all the info, and was able to get in there undetected, all that kind of stuff. It just, it's hard to picture that happening, right? And so everybody has been curious about these things, and hopefully, who knows? It's part of this appears like a just information dump. Like if you're a prosecutor and you are trying to hold up a defense, you might just swamp them with all the discovery, just tons and tons and tons and tons of data. We go, here it is. That's everything. And that 80% of it's just nonsense, whatever records. But it's like, okay, here's 1,000 boxes. Have fun. And then you can say to the judge, I shared everything, but really just swamped with more information than people can go through. Part of it smells like that. But maybe there'll be something cool with these JFK files. Because they do seem to keep releasing more batches. Well, Ben Shapiro wrote an op-ed. I don't know if this is originally in the Toronto Sun, which would be a weird place to put it, but I guess a lot of people probably aren't big fans of Ben Shapiro domestically outside of like right-wing sort of deals. So I'm going to pull this up from Yahoo News, from the Toronto Sun. And it's Ben Shapiro wrote an op-ed about JFK. We're going to go through it. It strikes me as a bit odd, I guess would be the way to say it. All right. Does it really matter who shot John F. Kennedy? Before we go further, Charlie, do you think it matters?
I mean, kind of.
Like if the CIA was involved in killing a U.S. president, does that matter?
I would like to know. Yes.
Right. And like if an ally of ours facilitated the murder of a U.S. president, even with our permission,
Absolutely. Especially if we've been giving them money.
turning a blind eye to nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Ben Shapiro disagrees. All right. I want
Of course he does.
I was trying to find a Ben Shapiro voice to talk real fast. This week in the Trump assassination. I can't talk that quick that much. All right. So this week, the Trump administration released tens of thousands of documents regarding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Speculation about the real explanation, quote unquote, for JFK's assassination has been an enormous cottage industry for decades. As of November 2023, a Gallup poll showed 65% of Americans believe people other than Lee Harvey Oswald were involved in the murder. Stopping there for 1 second. As of 2023, basically 2/3 of America doesn't believe it's Lee Harvey Oswald. I think the fact that a majority of Americans think it wasn't just him, that in and of itself means it's probably important to shed some light on this. Because if it is just him, if all the stuff comes out and goes, conclusively, we have found that it was just him, whatever, then maybe that would help put people's mind at ease. But if 2/3 think that other people are involved, that seems to make it important.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that the poll is ran in 2023, run it 10 years prior to that when more of the boomer generation is still alive, and I bet it's higher.
Well, hold on. He actually gets into that kind of stuff. Okay. So, but here's the next sentence. At no point since the assassination have a majority of Americans believed the truth that Oswald was a lone gunman. Now, Ben Shapiro is like a year or two younger than you and I. Okay? So, I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a super genius computer man with whatever. He went to good schools. I forget which ones. Super smart. He's a lawyer guy. He's not in the government. So he has seen the same stuff we've seen our whole lives.
I mean, yeah, that should be.
Okay, so you go, this is the truth. It's like, well, okay, why? Let's just see the evidence, because it's Ben Shapiro. He's a lawyer. He's not going to just say, this is conclusive without being conclusive. He's an attorney by training or what have you. Perhaps that's because the idea of a lone gunman achieving such a high-profile assassination on camera in the modern age seems so unthinkable. But of course it isn't. I don't know if that is the reason. This seems like he's setting up a false argument here. It's kind of a straw man argument. He's creating an argument and then arguing against it, which is something that he typically picks apart. All right. William McKinley was assassinated by a lone gunman in 1901. Teddy Roosevelt was shot in the chest in 1912 while campaigning for president. In 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt narrowly escaped assassination when Giuseppe Zangra fired 5 shots at him, killing the mayor of Chicago. Gerald Ford was nearly assassinated twice in 3 weeks. They did not like him. In 1975, and John Hinckley Jr. shot Ronald Reagan just a few weeks into his presidency in 1981. And of course, Donald Trump was nearly assassinated during a campaign speech last year. In other words, presidential assassinations are shockingly common. Okay, take out Donald Trump for this one, which is also another one that's a little weird. So you got 5 over an 80-year period.
Plus Kennedy's, so 6.
Okay, 6. Yeah, so, I mean, during that time. Okay, whatever. But, all right, take Trump's out of it, right? And I haven't looked into all these, right? But definitely before Kennedy. Think about Ronald Reagan when he got shot. Do you remember seeing the footage of that?
Yeah.
What happened?
It was like right in front of him.
Dude just walked up and pow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, most of these are close range. It's campaigning for president. They're not running metal detectors, checking the crowd. It's people bringing in the handgun and getting close and pop,
Yeah, they're not trying to get away scot-free.
Yeah, or, maybe they hope, but they're just like, I'm going to get as close as I can and pop off some shots.
Make sure it's done. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's bad. Don't kill people. But it's one of those things you go, it's not insane to me. Because, like, nowadays with all the security, but if Trump just went into a crowd campaigning in Chicago, and like people were just allowed to just flow up willy nilly, I could see someone taking a shot at him. And like, that's why when you see him amongst the crowd shaking hands, those people have been screened before they got in, and not just him, of course, all candidates, we try not to have people assassinated these days, which is a positive move. But Kennedy, that was a very long shot along a route, like a parade route or what have you. But, it was knowing where JFK's motorcade would be driving, positioned in a place that had a good, it was a sniper shot. Trump's also, it was closer and easier shot. But, of course, it was another long-range rifle in a good position with with another inexplicable lone gunman who had some contact with the FBI, it seems like, according to cell phone records. All right. So right now, the argument is people don't believe it because they can't believe it would happen on television. But, of course, it's happened before. Reagan's was on television. It's like, okay. I guess that's an argument. So why are so many Americans convinced, despite all available evidence, that others were involved in the JFK assassination? Now he tells us. Much of it has to do with rapidly declining levels of trust in the American government since the 1960s. Yeah, to a degree. But how come they haven't been the same mystique doesn't surround all of those other assassination attempts? Ronald Reagan's would-be assassin, Sirhan. Oh, wait. Or was he Sirhan Reagan? The guy that shot Reagan was obsessed with Jodie Foster. Was that Sirhan?
No idea, and I did not know the obsession.
Oh, yeah. Well,
interesting.
But he, Sirhan was up for parole. He has maintained the entire time he's in prison that he has no recollection whatsoever of any of his actions. And like he has seen footage. Hinckley is who shot Reagan. Sirhan. Anyway, but who the hell was that? What did he do? Anyway, was it Hinckley or Sirhan? Anyway, one of these cats has just been like, I don't remember doing it. I don't remember being there. Like, I see what you're saying, but like I can't feel bad about it, which would get him free. If he apologizes and takes ownership of it, he gets out of prison, basically, on probation.
Really?
But he says, I can't feel bad about something I have no recollection of. Yeah, and it's one of those things like, once again, when you get into some mind control experiments at the CIA, you go, well, that's not ideal, So it's another thing, like, we don't obsess over that one too much, but like the JFK one, lots of people have been like, something doesn't seem right.
Maybe because the shot was supposedly concealed? Like, is that why? Like, it just wasn't blatant out in the open?
Is that why there's so many conspiracies about it?
Yeah, just because, you witness Kennedy getting shot, but you don't witness who did the shot, when, where, at that exact moment,
Well, I think part of it is that there was so much distrust at the government level, and then also Oliver Stone's movie, of course, and all that. But all that was just sort of a... Sirhan was Robert F. Kennedy. That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. Look at that guy. Grumpy. But I'm pretty sure I guess it flipped away. But I think it was Sirhan that says he has no recollection. So that's even worse, because that was RFK right after JFK. So, same time period, same people in the CIA. But yeah, that one we just kind of let go. He was probably going to be the president, like how everything was going. All right. But Shapiro says it's just because of government distrust. And that's the reason for our curiosity. So he goes on. While only 52% of Americans believe in a JFK conspiracy theory in 1963, so in 1963, over half the country believed in one. An idea fostered by legacy media, which claimed that he had been killed by right wing hate, which is true. That is something they push. Like, oh, it's right wingers hating them. By 1976, that number had skyrocketed to 81%. That trend correlates with a radical increase in distrust in the government generally. In 64, not 63, but in 64, 77% of Americans said they trusted the government to do the right thing always or most of the time. So with 3/4 of America, almost 80% of America saying we think the government will do the right thing, still over half of America said that they think other people were involved.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to clarify that those are two separate stats. 62% believed in the conspiracy, but 77% trusted the government to do the right thing.
So even though almost 80% of the country said the government will do the right thing, over half of the country said, I think there was more involved than Lee Harvey Oswald.
Okay.
So during the same time, when everyone trusted it, over half the country thinks not just a lone shooter. By 1976, that number dropped to 35%. Look at that. In 13 years, what was the damn thing? Yeah, in 12 years, it had dropped that many points. It dropped 42 points. And as of 2024, the number is 22%. And I think that number is high. I think it should be right around 1. And that's
only the people in the government.
Yeah, we always do the right thing for us. All right. So now distrust of government is a perfectly normal and even admirable feature of American political life dating back to the founding. The founders distrusted government not to abuse the rights of individuals and thus sought checks and balances to prevent it from occurring. But since the 1960s, American distrust of government has been matched by a massive expansion of governmental intrusion. Correct. All of which suggests our modern distrust of government carries with it a flavor of conspiratorial. The founders believed ambition was common to all men and that ambition thus had to counteract ambition. Today, Americans believe that the problem is that our government is staffed by uniquely bad men. It is. So this is this one sort of, I feel like this shifts the argument, right? And so we go from talking about Lee Harvey Oswald and all that kind of stuff to being like, all right, it's an American thing to not trust your government. That's cool, right? But also the government's gotten more involved in our lives, which is bad. It's like, okay. And it's like, people are getting conspiratorial because they don't think, the checks and balances will work. They think they're all corrupt. It's like, all right. The founders were right. The corruption of government is innately connected to its scope. But today's Americans instead believe the corruption of government is simply a question of the wrong people controlling the government. I don't think that's true. I mean, I guess I take that back. I think there's a big part of the Republicans and a big part of the Democrats that think if my team's in power, it's going to be okay. But I feel like that is dwindling more. I think the fact that the Doge thing and Trump being like, let's just cut all the agencies, I think there's fewer people that just think like, okay, once my team's in, everything will be okay. There's definitely still some of them. But I think a lot of people are into the get rid of the bums, like it's all corrupt. So the problem isn't a government with too much power, but a government controlled by enemies. Now, undoubtedly, there are awful people in government. Certainly, there have been conspiracies of such awful people within government. See, for example, the Anthony Fauci-led attacks by career staffers on those who oppose COVID-19 lockdowns. So now he acknowledges, of course, there are bad men in government who conduct evil conspiracies against American people. Okay? If we misattribute broad and endemic problems of government to such conspiracies, despite all available evidence, what? We miss the point. We maintain the size and scope of government while hunting shadows and training ourselves to distrust our own eyes in the process. Conspiracies exist, but they require evidence. Otherwise, they're conspiracy theories, which is a term invented during the JFK investigations. And a country that falls for conspiracy theories without any supporting evidence is a country ripe for the plucking by demagogues on all sides. Thus ends this op-ed. Give me your thoughts, Charlie.
Well, but he said, but conspiracies exist, but they require evidence. But then he said, despite all of available evidence, we missed the point. Wait.
It is, and before, and maybe I should have read this and then gone into my little rant beforehand, but like, it's not, okay. There's circumstantial evidence. There's inconclusive evidence. Sorry, that's some musical about courtrooms that I can't remember. I saw it in 5th grade. But
was it the Bill one about bills?
No, on Capitol Hill. Yeah. No, this is an actual play. There's a song that's like circumstantial evidence is inconclusive evidence, and that is something. I don't know. I heard it when I was 10. Only Shorecrest would put on a play about courtroom dramas at 10 years old. Wow. Or what happened. It might have been the high school. I don't know. I don't remember. I was 10. But anyway, so there's proof and then there's evidence, right? Okay. So you go, well, there's no proof that the CIA worked with them. Okay. Fine. Is there circumstantial evidence? Now, maybe. There's evidence that the CIA got involved with covering up the killing of Oswald before he could testify with the whole Jack Ruby thing. There's evidence that, there's there's motivations for the mob and all the people we went through, right? There's motives and opportunity. Which is something too. I mean, like, as far as like a lawyer writing this, it's one of those things where you go, I mean, there's more than nothing. And the fact that there's not more than what we have so far is because it's all been held top secret by the government that we suspect was involved. And so to be like, well, we don't need to, like, this information's coming out, but who cares? It's like, well, I think we should care if we can show evidence that our country killed our president because they're mad about whatever, And don't get me wrong, I don't have a lot of love for the Kennedy family. They JFK and RFK, they indicted my grandfather and kind of made his life hell he got audited for the rest of his life because not guilty. And they were kind of pissed about that. But grandfather lived a long life. I don't have a lot of love lost for the Kennedy family, but you can't just it's one thing when John Wilkes Booth, this random Confederate fella, is killing the tyrant, and you just, an actual lone gunman doing something, right? It's not good. But, an actual nut, an actual politically motivated person who gets a wild idea about self-importance and what they're going to be able to accomplish. They do something, the country can mourn, whatever. That's bad, but it's not terrible. Terrible would be when an agency paid for by taxpayer dollars and running drugs over the entire globe, allegedly. Well, I guess they did get caught doing that with coke. But they stopped, Charlie. They stopped. They don't do it anymore.
I bet they did.
Yeah, they stopped. Once people found out, once Ollie North was like, he stood up there and goes, hey, yeah, so what? I gave the order. They're like, well, I guess we're done doing that now. As much as it's lucrative to run kilos of cocaine, I guess we'll just stop because we don't have any more off-book operations. And, of course, the heroin in Vietnam and Afghanistan. But anyway, an agency that theoretically is funded by taxpayer dollars and theoretically exists to help provide intelligence of what's going on around the globe to our president and our Secretary of State to inform our foreign policy, to have this agency go, you gotta go. That's a whole different thing. It's Marvel movies, Hydra. Remember, like with Captain America, at some point Hydra was running Shield, and you go, oh, how did that happen? It's just like, well, they're everywhere, and they just grow a new head, and they just stay. And that's kind of how the CIA feels, where it's like, what are you going to do about it? Like, they might kill you. They might kill you. I mean, look at Doge. Doge's been doing a whole lot. Have they even sniffed at the CIA? I think even Elon Musk said something like, well, I don't want to be assassinated.
He said, he's like, there's things I can't report on because I want to live.
Right. And I totally understand that motivation. It's tough because, like, you go, if I was president, I would have the guts. Yeah, it's like until they show you a picture of your child sleeping in the bed and go, like, look, I know you don't care about your life, but what about this kid? And you go, yeah, I don't want that. And you go, hey, how about your wife? You go, yeah, just leave my family alone, please. And then, like, God knows how many pictures they show you, And at some point, you just go, all right, there's other things to tackle. There's other very important things to focus on. I should focus on the important things. And that's how the CIA feels. I don't know if that's how most Americans feel about it. That's how I feel about it, where it's such a big problem that I legitimately don't know how one overcomes it without actual martyrdom. I think you need just a non-procreating, guts of steel autist to go in there and just put it all out there on Front Street and and die. Like, they're not going to live. And, hopefully their parents are already dead and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, outside of that sort of like lone brave politician with no connections to anybody, which of course they'll then probably discredit and say, it's a Russian asset or a Manchurian candidate or something like that. But I don't know what you do about it. I don't know what you do because their off-book drug running, allegedly, is so lucrative. And going back to Vietnam, going through the cocaine era of the 80s, I mean, come on. Like, Pablo Escobar had submarines, and he wasn't in the government, Did he win election?
Which led to the crack epidemic, too.
Which was probably also, yeah. But just so you know, you get crack money, you get 80s coke money, you get Vietnam heroin money, you get Afghanistan heroin money, you get Afghanistan opiate money to the Sacklers. It's a lot.
And probably fentanyl right now.
Yeah, fentanyl, it does seem to be uniquely Chinese. But maybe not. I mean, you got to get the opiates from somewhere. I don't think you can just drive it like meth, where you just like throw batteries and Mountain Dew together and suddenly you got drugs,
Right, or they're just like, it's China.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. We never lack a scapegoat, that's for certain. But anyway, so yeah, the CIA is one of those like terrifying things where you go, I really don't know what the answer is. And the sad thing is, I think Putin's right. The men in the black suits come talk to the president, and then all the presidents act the same after that. George W. Bush, he famously said to, I think it was Glenn Beck, when Obama got elected, and Glenn Beck met with him. He's real afraid of what it was going to be like with this left-wing radical becoming president, all that kind of stuff. And W was just like, oh, don't worry. He's like, as soon as I get in here, they'll read the same stuff to him that they read to me, and he'll make the same decisions I made. And you just go, well, what's that information? If there's something these people can tell them that makes everybody behave the same way as president, and Trump might be different to a degree, but in a lot of ways, not so much. I mean, Israel's still booming.
Mm-hmm.
We just ordered a bunch of F-47s. 47th president did. They do look pretty cool, though. But it is like, USAID, that getting dismantled is an interesting one, but like, I don't know. I mean, as much as that is CIA slush fund, it's not all they have. I mean, there's entire banks that were set up that are run by the CIA to wash drug trafficking funds. One of them got caught, and shut down, but there's no way that was the only one. And so when you get all these sorts of things together, it is terrifying. It is terrifying, and this is an agency that ostensibly has all the protections of the U.S. military, but none of the boundaries of the U.S. border. They are a multinational organization that does whatever they want, and then they can always turtle back behind our military. And I hate that. But anyway, for me, so with Ben Shapiro's op-ed here, what read do you have?
I don't know how you label this just the nation's personal mindset that don't trust the government when the government sealed the file. Like, why are you sealing the file if you're not
hiding anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point.
If it's not a conspiracy, release it.
I mean, I agree, and I think that's a big problem too. It's like, if there's no cover up, then what are you covering? Part of me, and we were kind of talking about this before we started rolling, this is probably unfair and probably will be called anti-Semitic. But part of me thinks like all these files getting unredacted that say that Israel was running lots of espionage in the United States during this time. There was a lot mention of Israel, a lot mention of quote unquote the Jews and all that kind of stuff. And then suddenly Shapiro's like, who even cares? Who even cares? There's the old joke about like the way things work with the left. It's not even a joke, but it's like, that's not happening. It's like, it might be happening. Fine, it's happening, but it's a good thing. And it's like, you're hateful if you don't want it to happen, So it's kind of that same thing where it's just like, nothing's going on. And like the next is going to be an op-ed. Like, okay, look, just because, let's put this out there in case it happens. An op-ed, just because Israel was involved with the U.S. government and might have had some kind of blah, 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 doesn't mean that whatever. It doesn't mean it was a bad thing. It doesn't mean they pulled the trigger or made the call. Like if Israel was asked to do something by their intelligence partners in America, then they're still not the ones that killed JFK. Okay. And then after that, maybe it's a good thing that JFK. I don't know if we'll get that far, to be honest. But it has that smell to it. It has that very, like the sort of leftist arguments that Ben Shapiro has picked apart for years since he was like 19 and on Breitbart and all that kind of stuff, just speed talking. It feels like all the things that he's criticized in arguments in the past are in here. And it doesn't even read like something you would expect him to say.
Well, it almost feels like this is a part of, if you really think about like how you just explained it, that is the steps of mind control in a certain specific way without drugging people. Like you're convincing them of their own thoughts.
Yeah, just like the Overton, dragging the Overton window slowly. We go, okay, well now this is the boundary in which our thoughts exist. Yeah. And just, this is not proof, but it is just a little bit of data. I don't know if they call each other friends. I think, but Bibi Netanyahu and Ben Shapiro are tight.
No.
They've done multiple things together, like videos and all that kind of stuff. They had like a round table with like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and Bibi Netanyahu. And like, I think Bibi Netanyahu would probably call him a friend. I think, Shapiro would probably say I'm not so presumptuous, unless maybe they're tighter than I think. But like, this is not to say that every Jewish person in America has a loyalty to Israel over their own country. That's what always gets thrown out there. That being said, I think, but Ben Shapiro, his wife's family is Israeli, right? Like, I don't know where she was born. She might have been born in America, but he talks about having family in Israel, and it's his wife's family. So he has family in Israel. I have family in Tennessee, in Ohio, and other places. And, so when things happen in these regions, I care about them more than, I don't know, Wisconsin. I don't know. I don't know anybody was Wisconsin. But so it's, I'm not saying he has dual loyalties. But he is heavily, like, I learned most of what I know about, like, the Israeli parliamentary system from listening to him talk about it. Like, he is very much interested in what happens in Israel. It's something that he does care about. It doesn't mean he's not loyal to the United States. It doesn't mean that he has, divided loyalties. It just means that he does care. He cares deeply about Israel and about Israeli people, especially, well, maybe not especially, just Israeli people. Not so much the Palestinians. He does not agree that that's even a term for people.
No.
So I don't know. Part of this just does feel like as soon as, like, Israel's coming unredacted a whole lot, it's just like, what does this even matter? What does this even matter? And then you throw, like, especially with this weak op-ed, like, this is, I mean, he doesn't even cite, he just goes, it's a fact that Oswald acted alone. And he supports it with no evidence. He'll probably say, well, the evidence has already been shown in court or whatever during the whatever hearings. Yeah, okay, yeah, back and to the left. Back and to the left. But, like, there's nothing in here. It creates a straw man argument that it's just about, the only reason people care is about American distrust in government, about how it's changing, even though when, like we said, when almost 80% of America thought American government only does good, still over half the country thought it was not just Oswald. And they thought it was the right wing at that time or whatever. And then later, when people, 12 years later, people trust the government even less, even more people think something's a mess. They no longer think the right wing thing, or at least not all of them do. But everyone thinks it can't just have been Oswald. And even if all of us are wrong, we're all operating on the same information. So to just say this happened, this is a fact. We don't actually know that because the information's not been released yet. Like, it's the whole point of releasing the information is we don't have it yet. And for a person that purports to be facts don't care about your feelings, someone that purports to be all about finding the truth and, all this kind of stuff, to just be like, who even cares? It's like, this is an odd one.
Yeah, what do you think his motivation for this is, since it doesn't line up with how he normally is?
I mean, honestly, I think the motivations are that I think
someone's doing it?
Well, I think that the extent to which he cares about the well-being of Jewish people, I'm going to say this in the most, the nicest way, that I'm blanking on the word I was going for, but he cares about the Jewish people in America, right? He's Ashkenazi, was it pronounced? He's Ashkenazi. He's devout. He's, his faith is very important to him. His people are very important to him. He cares about the well-being. He cares about there not being anti-Semitism. He cares about the people of Israel. He's got a lot of family over there. It is the one Jewish state in the whole world, and there are a number of entities and countries that would like it to be wiped out and not be a Jewish state anymore, which of course would be awful. As much as I got beef with the Israeli government, Israel's existed for however long at this point. Like, it's a country. Like, they have a right to defend themselves, all that kind of stuff. So I think that he has a concern that Israel had some involvement, to whatever degree, Maybe he's talked to Bibi about it. Maybe he hadn't. There's other people in the Israeli government that he's also connected with. It doesn't have to be all the way up to the top, you know? So maybe he's talked to sources. Maybe he hasn't talked to sources. Maybe it's just things that are popping up. And his concern, I think, is that there will be a rise in anti-Semitism, which, you know, already on the right wing and the left a little bit, like from October 7th, this response to October 7th, anti-Semitism's definitely been on the rise. You know, the Islamicist side of it definitely feels empowered. They get lots of support from the left in defend the victim type of thing. So it's already kind of on the rise. The distrust of the Israeli government, which always gets you know, put as anti-Semitism, which is it's not. You can distrust. I distrust all the governments.
Yeah, right.
You know, like all of them, other than Javier Milei. I like that guy. But the rest of the government there. But anyway, so I think it's a well-meaning attempt to diffuse things and get ahead of it. I think
Makes
this
sense.
is, yeah, I mean, to be the most charitable, that's what I want to say. To be the most charitable, I think that it's not like some, you know, conspiring with the Israeli government to cover up their involvement. But I do think it is like, let's take the piss out of it a little bit. Let's calm it down and say like, it's probably just nothing. It's probably nothing. But I mean, it's written so poorly is my like one of my big issues with it is so poorly written. It's so poorly argued. Like it's not even argued. It's just,
Yeah, the points don't connect.
it doesn't connect. Like it doesn't connect. There's no real argument made. There's a lot of kind of just there's straw man arguments that he kind of defeats. But it's nonsense. Like this whole, it was just a waste of, I mean, we're doing an episode of it. So, you know, it wasn't a total waste of time, but it essentially, I mean, sitting down to write this was a waste of time. And that's, I guess that's one of the things that really stood out to me the most about it is like, you're Ben Shapiro, the guy that would, you know, own the libs, you know, and drink leftist tears out of your tumbler and all this kind of stuff. And this was just,
Maybe that's to us though. Like maybe the simpler mind buys this.
how can you get more simple than us, Charlie?
You know what I mean? But like, you know, things are marketed to certain, you know, Donald Trump markets to certain people. Joe Biden marketed to certain people, you know.
But this is an op-ed in a newspaper, right? And so like he's not going, like his audience who just talked to, I'm sure, I don't know what he says on the show these days, but like I'm sure he's made an argument, right? But it's like he has made weak arguments before, especially when it comes to things involving Israel, where it does seem more emotionally based. And, you know, you can understand it. You got family over there, you know, pump your chest, like leave my people alone type thing. You get it. But he's made countless, like, even if it's not, you don't even have to agree with them, but just in a debate argument kind of sense, like he has come out strong in a number of times where he's just like, pop, 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 and just hits you with points that he's got. And it's like, how about this? How about this? How about this? How about this? And this didn't have any of it. You know, it was trying to excuse away why people are distrustful because, oh, it's just the government in general is why they're distrustful. And it's like, maybe when everyone's like, I think the government's covering up the murder of the U.S. president, maybe they became more distrustful after that. Because you can say, you know, chicken or the egg or whatever. You know, well, as people became more distrustful, that's when they started believing this. It's like, yeah, or maybe as more people are like, holy cow, our government is not doing good. They probably killed our president. They got us into a war that no one wanted. Look how much all this bad stuff, like maybe all that added to the distrust and not fueling the other way around, you know?
Yeah. It almost makes It almost seems like he's trying to make us blame ourselves for distrusting the government, like it's our fault.
Well, he does.
Yeah.
I mean, you're correct on that. I mean, well put, yes. Because he said, let's see. What did he say? But basically, like, here we go.
Yeah.
All of which suggests our modern distrust of government carries with it a flavor with a U in it. He's flavor with a U. There's something wrong. This is a cry for help. That is a cry for help. That is not how you spell flavor. Someone has Ben Shapiro tied up. It is AI doing his show.
Somebody check on him.
Yeah, someone check on him. If that yarmulke's not on his head, just look for him. Just look for him. Yeah, that was a cry for help. This is him signing with his eyelids. Flavor with a U. Anyway, flavor of the conspiratorial. So it is one of those things that said, like, that does say a little bit. It's good to distrust the government, right? But you don't understand why you should distrust the government, because you still think that the right team in power and it'll be good, as opposed to just being too big and too invasive. It's like, no, it's too big and too invasive. Like, we agree. It's like, so, but with this distrust, you get a little conspiratorial. It's like, so it's on us. It's on the collective conscience. Yeah. Sometimes when I missay it, it tingles up in my brain.
Same.
Like I said, you can't get more simple than us, Charlie. But it does. You're right. It does seem like a little bit of the problem is you. You need to have right think.
You think that's why the U is in there?
Ah.
Oh, is that too conspiratorial?
But no, but for like, I mean, it is that kind of, you need right think, which is 1984 type stuff. It's another stuff that this thing reads. I mean, it just reads like just total slop. It reads like just a totally surface, just specious lefty argument that you're used to, where you go, what the hell is this? Like, you're not saying anything. Like, you're not saying anything. You're trying to score points and dunk a little bit, I guess. But even this is lacking dunking.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what is he dunking?
I don't know, and that's the thing. He's normally like more aggressive and more of a jerk, and I'd say that in the nicest way possible. I too am a jerk.
That's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, right. I'm just saying, all the jerk. That was my German. I went to Swiss chef. I do not believe the Swiss chef was a Nazi. I just want to put that out there. I feel like I just need to put that out there before it gets ahead of me. But yeah, no, it is. I don't know. Yeah, it misses the dunk. Like, it misses the edge. It doesn't have anything to it. Like, it
lacks Shapiro.
It does. I think it does. And it does, to go conspiratorial, you do go like, did you even want to write this? Because at that point you do go like, did you want to write this? Or does IDF have your family held hostage? I don't believe that. That's just a joke.
Awkward.
Just a joke, but that's how it reads. Like, this thing is so weak sauce. And you can disagree with Ben Shapiro 100% of the time. You can agree with him 100% of the time. What I'm saying is, I've never seen him present this like weak sauce to the masses. Maybe he does on a show. I don't know. I mean, not that his show isn't well viewed and well listened to. It is. He has a strong viewership and listenership. But I think, when you have your built-in audience, you can have, especially when you're doing a show every day, you can have a weaker show here and there. And it's not the end of the world. But I don't know. This is just, there's nothing to it. There's nothing to it. And that's strange to me. You got anything else you want to say on this matter?
Nope.
Do you want to talk about your hatred of the Jews?
I mean, no. The funny
that hesitation I didn't expect.
No, it's the same. My background is the same as his as far as the Ashkenazi, the northern the Eastern European ties of the Jews. Obviously, his family went south. Mine went west. That's fine.
Are Ashkenazis all from? Is that like
It's,
Moses?
I mean, it's typically. Well, I mean, I don't know how to trace it, honestly, but I know my family background is like the Eastern European Ashkenazis.
Okay.
I don't know if there's other groups of Ashkenazis elsewhere. I've never
Well, we were
traced
talking
it.
about you going north and him going south and all that. Cause I was like, did everybody start at the same spot? Like now I have questions.
No idea.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, but way to make yourself immune. Now it's just me.
No comment.
Yeah, just me with a German last name. Great. All right. Good enough of that. How far are we into this thing?
1.
Okay. Well, we don't have time to totally dive into this, but did you see what happened with the Signal group about the Yemen attacks?
It's awkward.
So, there was a group Signal message initiated by members of the Trump administration that had Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, what's his face? A bunch of people in there. Waltz. Who else was in there? Yeah, JD Vance, of course. And then they invited like the editor of The Atlantic into this somehow by mistake. I mean, surely this Waltz guy, Michael Waltz, and John Ratcliffe was in there. Oh, and also Tulsi Gabbard, it looks like, was in there, and also Susie.
Emojis.
Oh yeah, the emojis are possibly the most embarrassing thing about this whole thing. But so they accidentally invited the editor of The Atlantic. I think he's the editor. He's either way, longtime Atlantic guy. And into this group where they were discussing the bombing run they did on Yemen that we just talked about last week. And this guy, he goes, at first, I go, this is BS. Like, these aren't these actual people. Like, he didn't call him by name, but he thought it was like a Project Veritas type thing.
Yeah.
Where they were trying to get him to make a butt out of himself so that they could capitalize and be like, hey, look at this stupid journalist, you know? And so then he's waiting, and all these messages are coming through discussing the potential attack on the Houthis in Yemen. And, JD Vance is kind of saying, I don't think this looks... I don't think it's the way to go. Only 4% of our stuff goes through the Strait of Hormuz, right? Is that it? Anyway, whereas a much bigger percentage of European stuff goes through there. And it's like, I just don't think this is in line with the way Trump's been talking. And he's like, I will not hold this up. I'm not a foot down. No, I'll go with the consensus here. But I feel like this is not a consistent message. They're talking about, well, no one knows who the Houthis are. So we need to really focus on Iran-backed and safety of transport as opposed to Houthis in Yemen. People don't know who Yemen is. They don't know who Houthis are. It was kind of, I think, Pete Hegseth. I think that was his point.
So just working the optics, basically?
They were talking about messaging and working out whether to delay this or to do it now. And they were all like, well, I mean, whether it's today or a month from now, it doesn't really change most things, And so it was this whole conversation where it all looked fairly legit. And so then he goes from thinking like Project Veritas type people to being like, maybe this is a setup. Like maybe it's bad information, it's misinformation on purpose. Maybe they're wanting me to publish something that's total BS, And so he's sitting on it going like, what's this play? Like, it's not every day you get invited into a group chat with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Vice President of the United States, the Director of National Intelligence, Trump's #1 advisor gal, Susie. I forget what her role is, but she's important to him. And whoever else I mentioned, And so it's not every day you get invited to these group chats. And so
smells fishy.
Yeah, so he just sat there going like, what is this? What is it? And so then it was like, all right, the strikes are going to happen. 1:30 or whatever. And so he basically sat in his car because he looked at the time. He's like, well, it's like 1:25. So he just sat there for a while. He said until like 1:50, and then started checking Twitter, searching Yemen, and then started seeing like, oh, okay, things are happening. Like, I think this is legitimate. And so, of course, he goes to his attorneys and it's just like, this is what I have. What do you think? So he writes about it. The government at this point has pretty much said, yeah, that's real, and so, oopsie.
Or was it?
Yeah, I mean, everything they talk about happened.
No, I'm just saying, but like, was the release on purpose for another reason? I just can't figure. I've tried to think about it. I don't know why.
The thing is, like, so Waltz created the group, right? And so he's not a guy that has been an opponent of Trump. He's never been anything but supportive of Trump. It could have been because he mentions that much like some of these, like J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth have their name, or maybe they just typed them in later to make it clear. But there's people, this must be Susie, or no, SM. I think that's, what's his face? The Jewish guy everyone says is a Nazi. Oh yeah, there it is, Stephen Miller. So like, there's a lot of people in there that are SM. He's like, I think that's Stephen Miller. There's JV. Okay, JD Vance. And so he, likewise, he was in there as just like JG or what's his name? Yeah, JG, Jeffrey Goldberg. So he's in there just as JG. And there is a guy that's in charge of analyzing things like tariffs on a national security level. And although this wouldn't be tariff policy, it is international shipping, and national security. So you could see maybe wanting that guy, and I forget what his name is, but his initials are JG. But it is weird in that Waltz just added Goldberg like the same day or the day before, like added him to his contact list.
And why would they have the same?
Well, they wouldn't. But the thought is maybe when he was putting the group together, like the group message, he thought, JG, up there, boop, that kind of thing. You just like
just quick,
like I've got a property manager whose first initial C, last name begins with CR, right? Then I have another person that works for me out of Kansas City. Same thing. Her first initial C, last name begins CR. And so there's time to hit CC, and it's like, it's not that one. I want this one, So maybe it was something like that. Question is why he added Goldberg to begin with. Because Goldberg said when he got the addition that Mike Waltz wants to add you, he was just like, yeah, right.
Right. Spam.
Well, yeah, exactly. He was just like, okay. And that's when he was like, okay, somebody's up to something, because there's no way it's him. And then he gets added to this group that's called Small Group, whatever. And so, yeah, he sits back the whole time just like, just waiting. Just like, whoa. But it tells us a couple things. One, these people need to slow down a little bit and figure out what they're doing. Signal, although authorized as being used by Joe Biden, he said y'all can use it to discuss certain things, but you have to turn in, you can't do auto delete. You have to turn stuff in within a month, which is a little weird to me, in that there is auto delete. So if you have a month to turn it in, show I didn't. Because like Signal, the big thing about it, they go, it's end-to-end encryption. So it's encrypted on your phone, goes through their servers, totally encrypted, gets decrypted on the other side by, keys that are, just one-to-one keys. That theoretically should mean it's safe from tampering. No, shake it off, Charlie.
Nope.
It's theoretically safe from tampering. It also, it was helped created in part, it appears, by funds from USAID at some point. CIA. But I guess you're not trying to hide from the CIA if you're vice president and secretary of defense, because they're watching all of your stuff already. That was the thing with old Salty Jimmy there. When he got his various like security levels, his different clearances, he was just like, oh, with me, I've pretty much signed off that they're allowed to just spy on me all the time, which is kind of weird when you hang out with him. You go, oh, you've even authorized yourself to be a bug. Yeah, that's why I always threaten him.
Are you wearing a wire? No, but Jimmy's here.
I don't need to. Here he is. He's my wire. But I don't know. It's so I guess it's authorized to use Signal for this, but like typically, one would think that things like military strikes, even if they are not acts of war, quote unquote, would be discussed in private meetings, in skiffs, where everything's safe. All these people have skiffs built in their homes, presumably, definitely in their offices, probably in their homes too. And so it's one of those things where you go, this is embarrassing. And then, of course, and this guy, probably more to cover his own ass than anything else, was making sure that he doesn't share any of the stuff that appears to be confidential stuff, because they were posting confidential stuff to one another in this group chat. And so, he goes, well, I'm not going to talk about it because it could put operators in danger or whatever. It's like, also, your lawyer said that's what could get you right there. Like, don't put that in there. But anyway, so he did a fine job here, but there's embarrassing stuff to the degree that like JD Vance is like, I'm tired of bailing out Europe, and Hegseth's like, yeah, those bums, those bums. Which, I mean, it's not like they haven't been saying that stuff out loud anyway. But the embarrassing thing, of course, was after airstrikes to send a bunch of emojis, of fists and flags and fire. It's like, I mean, I get it, but I'm also not in the cabinet.
It's kind of tooly.
Yeah, it's one thing. Like, I get like amongst your bros, like, oh, we did, bro. But it's like in your professional thing, Susie, what's her face? It's like, it's like, oh, I'm happy, proud of everyone, especially our men and women at CENTCOM and on the blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, that's a good answer, It's just like, fist, flag, fire. It's like, okay. So we're going to see how that turns. I don't know if what's his face that put this together, Michael Waltz. I don't know if Michael Waltz is going to stay there. I mean, Trump said he learned a lesson and made a mistake. Seems like Trump's kind of forgiven him. There is the question of why he was adding the Atlantic press guy to his contacts on Signal in the first place. Like, that's odd.
And you said it was the day before?
Let's see. On Tuesday, March 11th, you got a connection request from Signal user identified as Michael Waltz. And then, let's see, what day? 2 days later. Yeah. And it could be that he's just old and he did that thing where it was like, yeah, give access to my contacts, see if I know anybody.
Oh.
It could be that, which would be so stupid. So stupid. But, these dudes are... I have met plenty of smart people that when it comes to things they do on the internet or with electronics, you go, you might as well be a caveman beating this thing with a rock. Like, I don't understand why you're making these decisions you're making,
I held you to this standard.
Yeah. It's like, in most things in life, I got you up here. It's like, right now, not so high. Not so high. I did not see that coming. Yeah, not see. Yeah, all right. Anyway, so we'll see how this kind of shakes out. It's kind of the new hotness today. Is this idiot? Like, this is so profoundly stupid. So profoundly stupid.
Did you see the name of the group?
Houthi PC small group.
What?
I think I forget. I think PC means something. Oh, this is the best part too. Like, they go, all right, give us all your persons of contact. Your POCs. Give me your best contact for all your departments. So everyone's just rattling off who to talk to at their departments. I'll talk to this person, this person, this person. It's like, this guy's with the Atlantic. But if this was just like a random dude that you accidentally put in the list, I was just like, what is this? You you've given classified information, you've given military strike information, you've given all your points of contact, and it's just no one even clicked to see who's in the group, and no one clicked.
Yeah, you can. Everybody can see everybody.
Do you ever? Anytime I get put into a group text, which I abhor, don't put me in a group text. But when it happens, I always click to go, who's in this group? Like, approaching 100% of the time, you know? And I'm not bombing Yemen, you know?
Yeah. I understand the efficiency of a group. Like, if you want to send a group message and include me, that's fine. I'm not responding in it.
No, I mute it immediately, actually. And so sometimes I don't get back to people for a long time. And I'm talking about my family. But I immediately go, mute, no notifications from you. And then I just check in every now and then. And so I miss things sometimes, but that's okay. I'm married. She catches things. It beats the amount that I used to cuss at them. I feel like I told back, how long ago was this? This is probably 14 years ago or something. I remember I was trying to check. I was at dinner with my mother, and it was also like maybe the first night of the NFL draft or something.
Ooh, this is going to be good.
And so I was trying to like kind of peek in like on the slide to see what was up. And like I got added to this group text. It was my family. It was my sisters and, you know, all these people. And it was just, and they were just like, you know, someone makes a joke, someone makes a joke, someone says this, someone says, it was just a constant thing where I'm like, I'm sitting there like, and my phone in my pocket is just, I'm trying to eat dinner and just like, you know, so I've told my entire family more than once, I would prefer to not speak to you than to be part of a group text. If I have to be part of a group text, like I don't want it. So now I mute it. Now I don't have to say mean things to them all the time. It's like if I had my preference, I would never talk to you again before I was in a group text. That's how much I dislike them. But yeah, it's like you get a signal group. Okay, we're going to talk about these things. We're all in different parts of the world. Okay, I guess. But this is something like nobody clicked to see who's part of it. No one said who's JG, you know? And like when he didn't say anything the whole time, I was like, hey, what are the thoughts from JG? You know? And towards the end of this, he says like after all this stuff happened, he left the group knowing it would send a notification to Waltz that JG left the group. And he's like, never heard anything. The guy, like, he never saw. I was like, oh, that's weird that he left the group. You know, like message him, nothing.
They're so lax on talking about confidential.
They just had no idea what they did, and
like, there's a certain responsibility. It's like a fiduciary responsibility, but even probably higher responsibility.
Yeah, in government, it's called a douchiary responsibility. Yes, quite, yes. But no, yeah, like surely one of them would want to know who's on it, just even for political expediency. Like, what if I want to talk smack about somebody? You know, just whatever. Like, who are you? Yeah, like who's in this group? All right, so I don't know. We'll see how all that shakes out. Yeah, that's all we really need to talk about today. We'll see what else happens in the world. You got anything for the fine people at home there, Charlie?
Yeah, don't add random people.
Don't add random people. Add known terrorists to your group chats. Like, follow, and subscribe. Hit the alert button. Add terrorists. Goodbye.